So yes, we're live. I know we agreed we should dance. So I'm sorry, Cristobal, I was not on the. We don't have a music though, but again, it's a good energy. How are you guys doing? Just while we're waiting for people to tune in, Vicky, how's everything with you these days?
Thank you. Everything is fine. Thank you for inviting me with Cristobal and with Tim. I think it's going to be a great discussion and in a very good company. I Googled you guys for you to know.
Amazing, Cristobal.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. Good. It's dark, it's snowing, it's COVID, it's lockdown, it's fantastic. What can I say? Nothing better to focus on business and performing than this. So it's all good. It's all good. Full of energy, even at whatever it is, 6:30 p.m. So it's great.
Hashtag working from home.
I'm in the States. Everything is great here. It's earlier in the day. The weather is lovely because I'm down in Atlanta, so all good over here.
There's a new guy in charge.
There's a new guy in charge. Yeah, we could go on and on talking about how much better the politics are, but I think that's a bad idea.
All right. Let's cut it off here with the politics. So everybody who's tuning in right now, welcome to the third Perform panel. I'm here with Vicky Blasiva, Tim Ho, Cristobal Alonso, Mike Coulter, and today we'll speak about a very interesting topic. I would say a little unsexy topic, and a topic that gets neglected often, not only with startup teams, but also in all kind of organizations, which is namely roles and responsibilities. And this has been an area that actually my co-author Cristobal has been exploring and researching and really digging into. So I want to start with you, Cristobal. I still remember this meeting we had in Copenhagen. We were discussing the acronym of Perform and what should the letters be, and all the letters were like spot on except this one. Could you maybe just share a little bit about that?
Yeah. This is like the black duck, the one that nobody wants at the end is going to get to you, right? So we were missing a letter. I said, what do we talk about? I think actually we changed it a couple of times. We went to responsibilities and ownership and accountability. We're playing with different things. And yes, I actually was not fond of this topic. I said, damn, this lands to me because it's the missing one. Even when we did the first workshop, I remember the material was a bit dry. And we wanted to test the waters, and it was really impressive to see how much was needed, right? How much, the moment we dig it in a little bit, how much people was the CEO, the CMO, but the responsibilities were not clear. The moment you dig into almost second level responsibilities, everybody, right? Which at the end of the day resembles into lack of accountability and even setting results, right? So I think it's very unsexy. I think Victoria was commenting before. It's very unsexy, but it's very necessary. And I think the second part that we touch upon the book, that to me is actually when it gets way more sexy, but complex, is when you scale, right? So what are the roles evolutions, the responsibilities evolutions? And I think Tim will talk about it afterwards. He's suffering his own skin as I am doing right now, is how even management, call it co-founders or management, realizes and basically goes through this at different levels, not only at their level, and supports the organization to define the roles and the responsibilities down the different levels, to be precise, which said that I would basically corporate do, right? But it's not in our nature as a startups. But if you don't do it, you are not going to scale up properly, and you're going to become inefficient way too early.
Yeah, and we're going to continue with the discussion, but I just want to give the time to for Victoria first, and then Tim, to briefly introduce yourself within 47 seconds, and then we'll continue just for the people have a context of who is here in the panel. Vicky.
Okay, 47. So I have a performance for 47 seconds. We are talking about startups. I'm actually a representative of something which is not a startup at all. So this is me, part of a very big international organization. But I'm here also because I wear many other hats. So I'm also part of NGOs, and I'm also trying to help startups, especially entrepreneurs in the social area, get better in what they do. So I believe that perform is also a good practice also for this field, social enterprises. I hope it's 47. Thank you for inviting me.
I don't like going after Vicky with those introductions because she's so awesome. She brought props. But I'll do my best. I'm Tim Hall. I'm co-founder of Simporter. Our startup helps companies to automate market research so they know what products they should launch to market and do a better job with that. We've been in business for about 3 years, and we help a lot of Fortune 100 companies, particularly in the FMCG space. I grew up in public companies in my first half of my career, and my second half of my career is my third startup. So I've got a lot of war wounds, and I'm happy to offer any tips or tricks along the way.
Yeah, thanks guys for the short introduction. And those of you who are tuning in right now, make sure to post your question in the comments, and the panel will try to answer it live for you. And of course, we'll draw a couple of winners to get a copy from the digital version of the Perform book. So make sure to post the question, and we'll make the draw. Tim, let's get back to what you were saying. You mentioned you were part of that's your third startup. You've been working for companies. What have you discovered when it comes to defining roles and responsibilities, specifically in early stage startups, and then the evolution around it?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a kind of a continuing thing you have to tackle. And it's not very glamorous or fun, but the roles of the organization change. For when you're a founder and you just have a couple of people or just your co-founders. So for example, when we started, my co-founder Dylan and I had 3 or 4 people at the most at that time. And so basically he did half and I did half. And as we've grown, now we're a little bit over 30 people. You have to be very specific because the needs of the company change and the capabilities of the organization change. So you have to meet regularly and figure out, who's doing what to make sure those lines are sharply defined.
How did you guys do that, like from a practical standpoint, like any specific tips and advice?
Well, the first time around, when we really got this thing off the ground, we were a few months old. We had a few customers. We went and joined Cristobal's accelerator in Riga, his B2B accelerator for SaaS. And that got Dylan and me together, my co-founder. We lived in different continents, got us together to really sit and hash through who was doing what. And we wrote it down on paper at the time. And then 6 months later, we had, a different kind of company. We had more clients and more challenges. And so practically speaking, every 3 or 4 months, we look at the org chart that we have. We look at the things we're spending our time on, and then we kind of challenge ourselves and say, is that the best thing for you to focus on? Is the best thing for me? At what point do we feel comfortable handing off that responsibility and accountability to someone else? Who do we need to go recruit to do that? And then ultimately, who do we want to recruit 2 or 3 years down the road to do that when we get to yet another hurdle?
Vicky, you unmuted yourself, so I just told you
Yes.
you might want to add something.
I was just listening very careful to what Tim said, and he's speaking about startups. But actually, these things, I hope you have listeners from big organizations, because these things happen also in big organizations. Also, now in big organizations, you have teams which are brought to bring a specific product or a new product line. So they're practically are acting like startups. So these rules of clearly defining responsibilities apply very much also to big organizations. And because you're very kind to mention that I doodle from time to time, I decided to do a doodle of what are the 3 major things that, to me, you should know about people in order to decide what roles and responsibilities they should have. And I will show you the doodle. So the 3 things are: what are people's skills? So this is the first. It's very important to know what people can do, and if they don't have a specific skill to really make sure that they get it, then what are their passions? You talk about a lot in the book about the role of passion for performance, and this is very crucial. And the third thing is, the ice cream. I'm probably hungry. The third thing is what is needed, actually. So if you need, for instance, a data scientist for Teams organization, then he should have the proper skills. He should be passionate about numbers, and somebody has to buy the product, the service of Team in order to use that. So these are the three things to me: skills, passion, and the need, what is needed. So this is a doodle because of your kind comment. Thank you.
And Vicky, talk to me a little bit about the passion, because I think in many organizations, be it startups or big organizations, it's often people looking at who is somebody who's good to do the job. So how could you, especially you coming from a big organization, different type of structures, how could you incorporate this culture where not just the strengths or the skills are being endorsed, but also people's passions and the things that they love to do are also into the equation?
You talk to people. So there is one single thing as a manager that we need to do. We have to talk to our people. We have to ask them continually what exactly do they want to do. I have an example of a colleague who, for quite some time, she's very passionate about green projects, for instance. And when we had a green project, I know green-related project, I know that she's the one who is going to do it with the biggest enthusiasm. And her enthusiasm is important because it will bring the enthusiasm of everybody else. So basically, you talk to people, ask them. I would say you can follow them on social media, but kindly not to spy on them. But you can really learn a lot from people's outside of the work interests, and people are keen to share. Somebody has to listen. Also, I'm in the position of somebody who has a manager from above from me and who is open to listening about my needs for development. So whenever there is a project that they feel that I can fit, they offer me to apply to this project. And that's it. Talk to people. Communication is always the problem, but communication is always a solution.
We have a question, but before we get there, I just want to hear, Cristobal, Tim, do you have anything to add in terms of this side? You've been seeing so many startups, investing in startups, but also you are running your own team of, 35 plus people now. How much does it play a role for you to make sure that people actually love what they do on top of being strong at it?
We're 40 people. Every week I give you 5 more people in the team. So this is and it's actually really difficult. I agree with Victoria. I don't think there is a secret by talking. I think the problem is making sure that you prioritize talking time with your team. And I think when we are also in Zoom, how boring, it's much easier in the past to drop and have a coffee is even fun, right? Now almost dropping for a call is kind of, another call, So, for example, I have my 15 minutes with everybody in my team that read the reports every Monday, and it's there, right? And it happens every time. And then if I can do drop-ins on WhatsApp, etc. So I think you need to prioritize time to talk to your team. And in today's environment, I think it's even more important. And I think the second challenge is not to this environment, but Tim probably can talk about this also. The more you grow, the almost you kind of want to only focus on growth, and you start not focusing on people, right? And many times I know maybe your salespeople should be selling more and you should be managing more people, right? At some point, we need to decide: do we want to be CEOs, or do we want to be shareholders, or do we want to be growth guys, right? Because again, one of the key challenges as CEOs in the startups is we love growth, but at some point, half of your job as CEO is actually managing people and making sure the organization is aligned, the passions, the roles, the responsibilities, and the KPIs that you set on people, right? And growing your people is super difficult. One of our biggest challenges right now. People that were great managers with 1-2 people, they have never managed 10 people, right? Which we might have. So how do we give them a tool set so they can do it? How do we actually dedicate time to do it? How do we even hire HR, which most of the startups don't have in the beginning? And they only think about HR managers for hiring, but I think many times they're even as relevant for engagement, for tooling the managers, to make sure that the communication is flowing, right? And it's usually neglected. That is almost one of the things, the last thing you hire almost is the HR person. I think sometimes they're way more important in the organization than the sales, because we maybe can do sales, etc. Right? So maybe think is now expanding the sales part, and how. So, but I think is in the startups is how do we start delegating responsibilities, and how do we choose as managers, as co-founders and managers, because that's the duality that you don't have in other places. What we want to keep doing, and it goes back. So, what's our passion? And if our passion is not managing people, and that's what the CEO needs to do, are we willing to leave the ego and let somebody else do it while I manage what I like, right? And that's an ongoing question that I think it takes almost every year or every 6 months to look at the mirror, right? And even my CEO is asking me, what type of CEO did you want to be? Now, what type of things you need to do, right? So you need to look at the mirror, right, on these things.
I want to share a practical solution, because we were talking about speaking to people and knowing their current passions. I do something in our team that could be useful. I don't know, you tell me. I drew a doodle about it, of course. So here it is. The technique is 3 by 3 by 3. So basically, it's for everybody in the team, not only so it could be for the CEO, but also for the whole team. So every 3 months, every quarter, you gather, and then you say, what are the three achievements that you're most proud in the last 3 months? What are the 3 goals that you're going to be working on? Your 3 key goals for the next 3 months, So 3 by 3 by 3. You have key achievements, so celebrate the past. You have 3 goals for the next 3 months. And I say, this should not be only for work-related topics. I've had an intern in the team, and one of his 3 goals for the next 3 months was to get sexier for his girlfriend who was coming from abroad. And he really worked on it. I mean, the guy dedicated himself. So you know their passions, you know what, and you know this time the guy is going to the gym all the time. And you can give him something to look at the gym, see how people are behaving. Maybe he can think of something to be promoted from your product in the gym, meet somebody in the gym. And that's it. So 3 by 3 by 3 is a formula that I would suggest if anybody wants.
Just to comment on Victoria, Tim, sorry, I think it's the second time you were going to start, but just one comment. I like, and it's very simple. In fact, there is a couple of applications that are in the HR space that kind of follow that principle. It's just so difficult for so many people to prioritize those 3 things. But 10 things are important, 20 things are important, right? And I think our manager's role is to engage in that conversation and to help them really prioritize, because what we tend to do is like, you know what? No, these are your 3 priorities. We haven't taught them how to prioritize. We just have told them what the priorities are. So I think, and this is part of the evolution, right? So initially the strategy we set and we told everybody what to do, right? Is how fast we help people, coach them about set your own priorities. If these are the company priorities, what are your 3 priorities? I don't know, work harder, work on 6, let's help you, but don't tell them, right? Because I think we tend to tell them too much, because in this growth, we're in a hurry. So we sacrifice too many times coaching versus what we think is growth. And what we're doing is just hampering long-term growth because our people is not growing. And it's a very difficult balance. This again, it's the typical short-term, long-term, but I think coach your people to prioritize based on their own KPIs and the company KPIs. And I think the long-term result is much better than if you try to do it yourself. Sorry, Tim. Now I really shut up and I let you.
No, I agree with what you're saying. One thing I'd amplify that is we tend to do that on a monthly basis to have everyone establish goals for that month. And that helps keep the numbers lower. So we're not trying to boil the ocean, but to focus on, 3 very specific practical things that we can cross off the list at the end of that month. And then we go through those as a group with each department head to make sure that we're all aware of what each other is doing. And it helps the group, helps people hold each other accountable. And then back to the point, the bigger point about what I totally agree with what Vicky's saying, if you have to have the communication to find out what people are passionate about. One of the misconceptions some of us have, particularly people who are trying to launch and grow companies, is that everybody wants to be a leader. Everybody wants to be a manager. And many times you find that people will say they do, but they don't really. And you see this a lot in sales teams, where your best salesperson doesn't really want to be managing the other salesperson. She just wants to be selling and closing, and trying to force fit that person into a leadership role or a sales manager role usually is not serving the company well. You do want to take best practices from people like that and find a way to redeploy that knowledge, but you don't necessarily need your best salesperson, chasing down the rest of her team, forcing them to do that if they don't want to do that. Same thing on the tech side. You might think everybody who's got, really strong technical skills eventually wants to be a CTO and manage lots of people, but many people just want to be extremely good at their particular area of expertise. So that's important for companies to keep in mind as they go down that growth journey.
Yeah, and I definitely agree. And also in terms of where the conversation started, with having conversations and really knowing what people are good at and what people love to do. And in a way, while the organization is growing, to keep that in mind when you map it. And in the book, we actually have a couple of exercises which are helpful for early stage teams, but sometimes actually big organizations are also surprised to see some subtleties when they do this. One of them is called Map of Responsibilities, an exercise, very practical exercise inspired by Eric Admeets. And it's basically for everybody in the team to sit together and to put down all the things they might potentially do in terms of responsibilities, and then to highlight what are the things that I love to do and I'm good at, maybe with green. What are the things that I'm good at, but it's not exciting me, but it's fine. I can do it. It's okay, at least for now. And what are the things that I might be good at or not, but I just hate to do these things. Mm-hmm. And once you have some sort of, then you can have a constructive discussion about how can we tweak things around. Can this person actually take some of the things that I did? And it sometimes can open a Pandora box, especially bigger organization might be afraid to have these conversations. But in the long run, you can also think about who are the people we want to hire based on the fact that nobody loves to do these things, right?
Yeah, I want to. I know Victoria is also. I know she wants to say something. Yeah. But actually, just amplifying one thing from the message from Tim, and maybe it's also answering part of what Yeva is asking on the questions. You can put it afterwards there. But it's like in a company, in a large company, many times salary growth, you need to be promoted because there is ranges, scales. You cannot have somebody in the trenches pay more than the CEO, right? Is really not happening, right? In the startup, you don't need to be in the top to be well paid. And the idea that if you're great at selling, you can always be in selling. You don't need to be the CXO to make a great money, right? Because we want performance, and we are able to develop our own kind of salary ranges, performance basis. Nobody's going to ask me how much this is. No. So I think we can adequate the salary much better. So people don't need to be promoted to be compensated the way they want, which allow us to say, you will be well paid, but do what you like. You do not need to associate getting out of this job to be well paid. You can get actually shares if you're the sales guy, if you enter at the beginning for us, and maybe the CXO have even less than you if he enters 3 years later because you contributed much more to that. So shares, salaries, we have a level of flexibility that it gives us a lot of that. When a bigger company, there's scales, graduations, etc. And if you don't go up, etc. And for more people might be, you know what, I want more salary, even if I love my job right now, I want to be promoted to manager. We don't have that, at least until we grow into 100 people. Then probably we're going to get at that moment. But first 50 to 100 people. So, and just answer what Yeva is asking, and maybe Stoyan, you want to face it there. It's not that we don't have expectations, so there is no disappointments. It's that we need to be reevaluating roles and responsibilities more constantly, right? So in a startup, every 3 to 6 months, the objective changes dramatically. So a CEO responsibility today is very different from a CEO responsibility 6 months from now. The same goes for the CXO, the same goes for the marketing, right? Which give us more flexibility. Maybe for 6 months, you're not doing exactly what you like, but we have new roles and new things and new coming out. I think that gives us that flexibility that initially, at least, We can move people around more. We can give a bit more of this side project that you can do so you keep happier, etc. So that might be one of the reasons. We still have expectations. Actually, I think we have way higher expectations than corporates because you need to deliver every 3 months. There is no slacking. My life is into it. My salary is into it. My mortgage is into it. So I have the highest expectations you could even imagine because also we're hyper demanding to ourselves at this stage. So I think actually we have high expectations, but we have more flexibility.
I like what Leva was written as a...
Let me just read it for the podcast listeners who are not seeing the screen, and then I'll get you to. So Yeva is joining in, and she's asking a question which Cristobal partly answered already. Could it be that startups are more flexible to role and responsibility options if to compare to companies who are already in the market, who are not so flexible in role change, even for better performance of team company KPIs? Vicky?
I want to say why I like what Yeva was commenting. I think that with the startups and with big companies, you have a lot of flexibility. Imagine a big company in which you can actually scout around in so many departments. Like I work in a bank and people think, oh my God, these are bankers. I don't want to be a banker or whatever. Then in a bank, you have a data science community, you have an IT hub, you have an end-to-end room who is creating new products, you have a legal department, you have a compliance department, everybody's favorite. So in a large institution, actually you have a great flexibility to look around and shop for a perfect role for you. And because before Tim and Cristobal, all of you were speaking about the right person for the right role, I want to give you an answer why we need that, why we need the right person for the right role. And the answer happens to be 42. You know why it's 42? It's 42, it's the meaning of life, as you know, 42. But then you have 42.195, if I'm not mistaken. So this is the distance of a marathon. And you remember what a marathon is. So people run for 42 kilometers, 195 meters without nobody chasing them because they want to. But what happened to the first guy who ran that? He started from marathon and he ended in Athens to announce that the Greeks have won against the Persians, and he died. And this is why you need passion and you need the right people at the right role, because you want these people to run this marathon today, tomorrow, the day after that. And if they are passionate, if they are marathon runners, if they like it, they will do it. Not like the poor guy from the fable.
I thought you were going to say so they die happy. So,
again, so as for the meaning of life, 42 is the answer. 42.195 is the answer why we need exactly the right people. Because these are the people who are going to survive, and these are the people who are going to be happy having run this path.
I would add to what you're saying. I do agree that large companies can have some greater flexibility and opportunities in roles, and they're not all bureaucratic and stochastic. And I agree with that. The thing with smaller companies and startups is flexibility and opportunities not necessarily here today, but it comes with time. So you may have less flexibility in a startup. If you're hired to do front-end design for a startup, you're going to have to do front-end design for a while. But because that company is growing in a hopefully geometric fashion, opportunities may come around faster. But an employee would have to be kind of patient because you don't have the luxury of switching people around to serve their passion exactly at that minute. Sometimes you got a real cadence of stuff you have to do first, but you have to have kind of sell the vision and have people understand that opportunities do come. They come faster once the company starts to grow.
Yeah, I just want to read a comment quickly, and then let's take a couple more questions from the audience. So there's a comment coming after the Vicky shared the last things. It's they're often in lack of actual work tasks and function description compared to the job advertisement. Usually there's a huge discrepancy between both. Cristobal, any quick comment before we move to the question?
Yeah, very quickly, because it is a very interesting part. I think we tend to, for startups, the corporates are the bad guys, right? Are the billions, right? So we hate them, right? And it's a very stupid attitude, because they have become a corporate for a reason, which is they did many things well, and they're still alive.
Bye.
Yeah. No, but one of the key things is like the job description. People say, "Oh, that's so bureaucratic." And the thing is, they haven't bothered to sit down to decide, what do I expect from my next hire, right? So, I need a developer, and I go and hire a developer. Yeah, but what do you need for the developer? What are the soft skills that you need from them? How do they fit the culture? What is the other manager? What are the responsibilities? What are the KPIs for the first, not for the next week, and for the first period that is urgent, for the first 6 months, right? So, of course, we don't have career plans. I tell my people, I will never make a career plan for you, but I want people to keep learning, right? But I think a job description, you can call it whatever you need, but you need to set the right scope and the right expectations for each hire. And if you're too fast doing it, or you don't put enough time, and you don't sit down with the employee on day one, and on Zoom is worse because you're not going to have a coffee. You're just going to come in and say, the guy's sitting in front of a computer like this. So what do I do now, right? So you need to welcome the guy. You need to sit down. Hey, this is what we expect from you. This is your key obligations. This is how we set KPIs in this company. This is how you relate with managers, etc., etc. So a job description, call it what you want, but it's fundamental, and don't call that a corporate thing. But of course, it needs to be evolving. So you need to keep sitting as a team set every month, every 3 months. What are the objectives of this month? What are the KPIs of this month, right? And that's what we might have more mobility, or it will dramatically change more in a startup. But we need to set job descriptions. I don't care if they are advertised or not, but to set the expectations and the scope clear with each person.
I would offer a practical tip there. I totally agree. And there are so many job descriptions available from companies that might be a little larger than yours. You can go on Indeed or other services. And when you start examining 5 or 6 job descriptions for a role you're looking for, you suddenly get a better idea of not only how to present yourself to a potential candidate, which you have to sell the company and sell your vision, but also what's reasonable to expect from him or her. And so, there's no excuse not to do that, because those tools are all available a few clicks away.
So let's take a question from the audience. How strong are your employees involved in building the corporate hierarchy or structure? And I mean, how strong, probably the person means how much are they involved in building the corporate structure?
I think very little. I think our job is how involved are on deciding what to do next. And that's what I want them to be. How strong are they? Well, there is an open position that instead of going outside, I look always inside to nurture my talent first, right? I think that's what you gain the respect from the organization. But if they have never been in an organization, they have never defined an org chart, why will they define an org chart, right? When I'm involved is strong in my managers. If they have 7 direct reports, say, hey, you have too many people. How do we actually get less people for you? What do you think are the ideas, right? So I think is when they face challenges within the org chart, the manager, but on painting it, or hey, that's basic. Sorry, that's the CEO, and actually probably you need to take it to shareholders. By even shareholders structure, changes on management of the structure in many organizations, they need to be approved by the board, and in many startups, is actually one of the things that the investors have veto. But I think what you need to involve strongly is into the next steps, into the next role, or when you're going to change manager responsibilities because too many reports or change of scope, you need to involve them in that discussion. You cannot make a decision without them being part of that discussion, right?
I agree with all of that, but one point I would amplify is I think that's the case with the overall structure, but when we have a department head who's got to flesh out his or her area, we want their input on what do you need to do to achieve these goals? Do you need 1 person, 2 people? You need some freelancers? So from that standpoint, I'm more interested in that person who knows that area better than the co-founders do, to give us their sense of what they need, and then we go figure out how we can fund that.
I wanted to say that to answer the question, how strong would be the employees to affect the corporate structure, hierarchy, organization? I think it depends also on the entrepreneurship skills of the employee. And this is something, this is not a new topic. It is a topic that is like 70 years old about entrepreneurship. But now the big organizations are reviving the idea of entrepreneurship, which would mean that if you have a good idea, you can pitch it like a real startup. You can pitch it to the management board and you can create your own business line. You can create a new market, you can create a new product, and then you can use the organization's resources without risking your livelihood because you're working in the organization. So you can actually build a completely new structure in the organization. And it all depends, again, on your desire to be entrepreneurial. It's not easy, but I don't think it's easy also for the startup community. So you just have to be willing to do the work.
Fun fact story, and I don't think I painted an org chart on Wise Guys until 2018. I didn't need one. We were 5 people, 10 people, where I have is clear responsibilities. But everybody was reporting to me. Like, they are very flat organizations, right? I think it's when we started actually either having multiple countries or some kind of indirect responsibilities, or we were worried about the line, how many people report to you, in this case to me, is when we said, okay, let's start drawing, right? But I didn't draw any org chart until 2018. As long as we were under 10 people, we just needed clear roles and responsibilities, not clear org chart.
Cristobal, talk to me about this, because I think I read the study somewhere. I can't refer the exact numbers, but many people in small and bigger organizations, they're struggling, they're stressed. They complain that one of the main things they don't know, they don't have clarity of their responsibilities, right? They have a role. This is what I was hired for, but they're not clear what exactly is expected from them and where is the boundary with respect to me and Martin are doing marketing, but I'm not exactly sure what is my ownership and what is this person's ownership. So do you guys experience the same? And how do we solve this in organization?
Well, I will say 2 things about that. One is I need more comms. So I think that person is saying, my manager is not talking to me enough, because when things are clear means I'm not getting clarification, which means my manager is not spending time with me. So I think it's a call for help, or a call for you're not doing your job. I think both, because again, our obligation is to listen to our people and anticipate. But the second part is, and I experienced this in our organization, when you are 5, 6 people, everybody goes to every meeting. Everybody's involved in everything. Everybody knows what everything is going, right? When you're 20, if you don't start changing the rules of the game, suddenly you have a meeting with 8 people. And yeah, everybody owns everything and nobody owns anything, right? So I think that it goes back into, I think, for example, we struggle because we were not doing a kickoff meeting. Because in the past, we didn't need a kickoff meeting for anything. We were all on the table, boom, 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 right? But suddenly, I keep hearing that we are 7 people here. Everybody more or less knows what to do, but nobody really knows what to do, right? So we spend now 4 hours on anything that we do, a batch, a project, a kickoff. It's a kickoff meeting. It's like marketing. What do we need from marketing? Scouting. What do we need from scouting? Financials. What do we need from financials? Cristobal, what do we need from you? Kicking off, setting a clear scope. So the guy who owns, okay, now I have all the data. Now I can go on. Now I know who is responsible of giving to me what they need to do on the dates. Now I can build a project plan that everybody understands, right? So I think we took too long, and it's probably my fault because I retain everything in my head and I'm comfortable with everything in my head, but not everybody works the same way as me. Not everybody is way more visual. They need more things on writing. So I think it's this evolution, and I think it's this 10 is the magic number, and then of course 10, 20, 40, 80. So we're in the 3rd jump. But I think it's that part that the people struggle. But you notice if you talk to your team. If you talk to your team, you will hear the sound that this is happening. Sometimes we just let it go for too long because either we don't want to hear it or we're not spending sufficient time with the teams because we're too focused on growth or whatever. And if that's happening and you don't like it, get a COO to do that for you. So at some point, maybe you are the external person, get a COO to do it if you don't like it or you cannot do it. But if not, you're going to just basically lose in the middle of implementation or the higher speed because you cannot implement, you lost your whole team, right?
I want to add one word in relation to roles, responsibilities, clarity about task, and this word would be over-communicate. Even if you think you've communicated, over-communicate. And I was digging in my past to those, and I found something, and here is a task for you based on this doodle. So, which is the right answer? You tell me. Boss says, write 2024. So is it A, B, C, or D? Which is it? It's could be none of the above, you know. You think you have given a super clear instructions, but in the end of the day, people might not understand. I've had a colleague of mine, she wrote me, so we have a newsletter, and she wrote me, do you want, we have extremely good relationship with her. She wrote me over Messenger, do you want to read the newsletter before I launch it? Or I just have to launch it? Do you want me to send it to you? Or and then I wrote, go ahead. Go ahead. I thought like, I give you a clear direction, go ahead. And my go ahead in my head was, send it to me. Yes, I will be your second eyes and I will read it to you. And she sent it to everybody. It was not a mistake, not a big mistake, but what if there was something inside which was not the right thing? So I just said, go ahead. And she did what she had to do. So over communicate is better than just keeping it in our heads. And I'm telling it as an advice to myself, because as a manager, I'm trying to get quite a lot feedback from my colleagues. I do SurveyMonkey. So I ask them a couple of questions. So on SurveyMonkey, they can answer to me without anonymously. And sometimes I don't like what I read, but it's instrumental for me to change in a way so that my colleagues, the team that I work with, can have more clarity and do their job better.
I just wanted to add, Vicky, what you're referring to is the curse of knowledge. As leaders, as entrepreneurs, as managers, we believe that people understand the things that we have in our heads. When you say go ahead, for you have all the context. There was a research they did where, I don't know if you guys heard about it, but they asked people to, to do like, to knock on a table. And with the knock, they have to represent a very famous song. Let's say, happy birthday, dun, 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 right? But they are not allowed to say anything. They can just knock. And they ask people, how many people do you think on the other side will understand what was the song, will guess it right? And people would say, I think 50% of the people on the other side will understand it. In reality, it's 2%. And
let's try it. I will try a song. Let's see if we can guess.
Jingle bells.
Beethoven's Fifth.
Yes. No, it was Jingle Bells. Bravo.
That was an easy one anyway, but like...
That's a secret Bulgarian code that you guys only know. That's what you always get, right? You trick everybody on these ones, right? Yeah. Okay.
No, but it's a reality. I mean, the idea that everybody else knows what's in my head, and not just from manager to employee, it could be like people on the same level and so on. It's just it's a very important point, Victoria, like to really make sure that the other sides understand what we mean. And I'm curious, Tim, to ask you, we spoke a little bit about evolution and roles and responsibilities, but specifically for you, how was it now that you guys grew and some of the people they had some certain responsibilities. Now they have to take ownership and manage other people. Could you maybe share some story or an example of what you did wrong and then what you learned about it?
Well, I think one of the things we did wrong was assuming that if you had functional expertise and you were really good at your area, then you should be good at managing other people without any coaching at all, right? And that's a fundamental problem, is people think that if you have sort of domain experience, you can manage others, and they're two different things, right? It's like knowing a subject area and then being able to teach it are two different things. So that was one of our big mistakes, was not understanding that skill set of being able to coach and manage people is something that needs to be coached and managed. And I think we found our way through that. One thing we did do is bring in, we're too small to afford an HR person or an HR team or anything like that. And we're all really busy. It sounds great to be able to spend that kind of time coaching and mentoring, but sometimes it can be a challenge, especially when you're trying to coach and mentor people who are working on coaching and mentoring their direct reports. So we did bring in HR talent from outside on a contractor basis. And the beauty of today's flexible labor market is you can find people with a lot of experience in the HR field who are willing to work for just a few hours a month to help kind of mentor and manage some of your key people, and give them some of the tool sets that can help make that job easier. So that was a trick a tip that we picked up just a couple of months ago that's starting to bear some fruit.
All right. Cristobal, I just want to get back to another thing that I think would be interesting, especially for startup founders who are watching right now. And in the book, the chapter of roles and responsibilities, the one that you've been primarily working on, and you're mentioning the 3 roles that kind of startups should begin with, the 3 H's, so to say, and then the 4th one, like maybe if you can kind of share a little bit about this, because I'm sure there's some early stage founders, aspiring entrepreneurs watching as well, not just only people who are having companies of 30, 40, 50 people and more. So if maybe you can kind of share a little bit about this, and then the evolution of roles. I think you've many times have been mentioning some practical advice on who would be the first people to hire afterwards.
Yeah, we kind of people like these 3 H's, right? And we kind of call it almost the mind, the heart, and the hands, right? So the hands is whoever needs to code the MVP. The mind basically setting the vision. The heart is the brand design. So that is translated. So it can be in 2 people if you are depending on the size. But I think it's more important that as soon as you can, you need a 4th person, which can take 2 shapes. One is kind of this project management direction, or a product person. Usually, if possible, the product person, but they're super difficult to find. So in the future, CPO, head of products, that starts helping the translation between technology and marketing. And as I always said, the moment you find that guy, even if you're 3, 20, or 40, just hire it. Because the most difficult people to find in the market, no matter how much money she asks, pay it, because if good ones will take your company to the next level, because they're able to translate 2 fundamental parts. In the evolutions, apart from the product person, we talk about 3 roles: finance, HR, and sales. So finance is the CEO, usually, or the COO, if you have it, is managing the Excel, right? But at some point, either you have more than 15,000 euros in turnover moving, or you have transactions between 2 or 3 different countries, 2 different currencies. The moment that happens, the CEO is incapable to do it. Or if he does, it's going to take too much time from his day to day. So that's kind of the trick of the rule of thumb. HR, when you either hire 4 people per quarter, or when you basically having engagement, communication, managerial issues, that's probably 20 to 30 people. But if you're already hiring 3 to 4 people per quarter, put an HR person, not only to hire, to onboard, to help the roles and responsibilities. Again, all of that time, if not, is the CEO, right? And the 3rd is sales. And sales, from the point of view, not hiring a salesperson, but hiring a salesperson to manage the salespeople. And the idea is that usually the CEO is going to be running sales. Once he learns the playbook of selling, he knows who he needs to hire to be selling, right? But there is a point in which you need to scale the sales organization. And then, as Tim was saying, you don't need your best sales guy to manage others. You need to have a guy who knows how to grow a team of A performers in sales, which they all think that's the best thing in the world, right? But they need somebody to manage them constantly, changing the commission schemes, making sure that they are aligned with the culture, making sure that they're collaborating, that they're playing as a team, right? And that is super particular. That is, companies might need a guy on 100 people. Some people might need them on the 11th employee. It depends a lot on your sales strategy. But those are the three roles that we talk about. HR usually neglected, CFO only when we do the round, and sales as soon as we start selling. This is what people think, and it's so wrong that this is not the right rules of thumb. I said, we are right now, we hired the CFO, we just hired. I just took one of my partners out of CFO to focus on partner, and I have a CFO person, and it mostly because I have 4 countries, so I have too many cross transactions. We need to hire that better, and also investor relationships. HR, 3-4 hires per month, we need it, but for us, the key is managerial toolbox and engagement, and we don't have sales. That's the one. We don't have, our scalability model is different, so we haven't worked on that particularly.
I have a question related to the book, because in this chapter, and possibly the people who are listening could also comment and respond on my question to Cristobal, and also to Tim, because you're working in a startup organization also. So Cristobal, you wrote something that struck me as I would say I would respectfully disagree with you on that, but let me hear your argument. So let's see what the audience thinks, like a little polling. You wrote, these are the roles, and the job title doesn't matter. What I'm saying is, when you're a startup, everybody's part of the C-suite, C-suite. And then when you're not a startup, when you are like me, part of a big organization, you are just a regular Joe. You cannot call yourself CEO, CFO, CMO, CRO, whatever C. So to me, I respectfully disagree that the job titles don't matter. Of course, the substance matters, but this is my take on this particular sentence, which somehow was even bolded in the book. So how would you comment on that?
There is three directions of this. One is because people call this a CEO and you don't know what the hell is that, right? You just need you're the boss, right? There is no boss. In a startup of 3, the 3 are working, right? So, or I'm the CMO, I run marketing. What is marketing? Everything that has to do with marketing. What is marketing? We are not doing any marketing. We don't have a product. We don't have customers. Why are we talking about marketing? No, but I'm the CMO, right? So to me, it's about, in a way, first put the responsibilities and then put names versus put names and then responsibility. That's one. Secondly is, as Tim was saying, that you're a good developer doesn't make you the CTO. And if you call them the CTO, when you hire a CTO on top of him, which you need to, or on top of her, they're going to be disappointment or leaving. So to me, you are all co-founders. That's the title that you all deserve, because you put everything aside to run this company. So your title is co-founder. The role that you take is indifferent. It's whatever the company needs, because you own 33% of this company, you're 3. And you want this to be the biggest thing in the world. Despite if you are going to call in the future chief guru officer or the janitor, I own 33%. And that CEO, he owns 1%. That's what matters at the end of the day, right?
There was a lady secretary of what is his name, the Chinese guy, Jack Ma. Mm-hmm. And she was one of the founders, actually, and she got some of the shares, and now she's a gazillionaire somewhere in China. So you have a point.
To me, so co-founder is a title that nobody can steal from you, in a way, right? That's a title that you deserve because you decided to do that one, right? What the role is what the company needs. The company is more important than you. Something that many times we even forget. The company is more important than you. What you matter is you have your equity, and even if you are demoted in the future, or even you have to give your position away because the company needs somebody else to take over you, you're still a co-founder and you're still on your shares, right? So to me, it's this obsession about, let's fight about who is the CEO, who is the CTO, it doesn't matter. You're a co-founder. Let's do what we need to do. So the only difference is, again, if we need to talk to investors, or when we need to talk to if you're selling to corporate, probably you need to do. So there is some importance of the roles towards the outside that if you have sales representation are needed, but really internally is not relevant for the first 6 to 12 months. And, teams can tell you there are 2 CEOs, and there's still 2 CEOs. And I always ask him, but who is the CEO? No. So, but why? Because they assign powers and difference to customers. But Tim, you can explain better than me.
We have 2 CEOs. My co-founder and I are both CEOs. Now, he does the job of CEO, and I do the job of looking good and drinking coffee. But when we're out talking to clients, the client wants to talk to the CEO, and we're co-founders, so we're both CEOs. So I would amplify, Vicky, to your question. I'd amplify what Cristobal said, which is roles. The titles do matter to the outside world, and you have to be thoughtful about those, and maybe not too silly, to make sure that you're presenting yourself and your brand well. But you can always have 2 things. So you can have someone who's, head of sales and fun guru or something like that, if that's what they want to call themselves, as long as the client and external facing one kind of makes sense. And then the other point, dead on, which is, you might have somebody with 2 or 3 years marketing experience. She or he can't say they're the chief marketing officer, because then you have to hire one, and then the nose will be out of joint. So you have to be thoughtful about saving opportunities and being clear about that. And we tell our team that all the time. We say, this is the team today, and in 2 or 3 years, there may be a layer of professional people who have run larger organizations in these functional areas. So be aware, somebody may come in at this level, and we want you to know that person would be someone you would, grow under and flourish under. So back to the original point, communication is really key. But I tend to agree with Cristobal that you have some flexibility in how you handle those titles to reflect what you're working on.
If any of you is looking for a chief fun officer, give me a call.
No, and just one more thing there. As an investor, I think one of the times that it matters to me is when I see large co-founding teams or co-founding teams that are friends or they have been friends. I always said, who is the CEO who is going to fire everybody else if they don't perform? But that's when I wear my investor hat, right? And I want to know who is judging performance here. Because I said, again, it's very important to me when they're very good friends. Because, or there is relationships. For example, we actually invest in couples. We don't have other VCs, other accelerator funds don't do it. We don't have any problem. But I said, who is the CEO? Both. No. Or one is CEO and the other is the CEO, but who? Well, we both do the same. To me, it's like, no. If ever is important, is when you have a personal relationship beyond the company. Then it's fundamental that you tell me who does what. In fact, again, I don't care about the title. What I care about who does what. But to me, and that has saved sometimes not divorces, but companies. I have divorces that the company has survived beyond the divorce, and partially it was because at least the things were clearly defined, and one has to exit, but there was a transition for that role. We get it, and they still talk to each other, for all I know, in the 2 cases that we have in the company. And one of the companies is doing rather well, even if it was very rocky for the staying co-founder, right? But I think, is that what matters? But as an investor, I want to know who fires everybody else or who judges performance of everybody else and assumes the accountability of the results that you are promising me to have, right?
And it get back to the same thing. I think main thing, Cristobal, you wanted to emphasize with this chapter, not that roles and titles don't matter, but more responsibility, especially in early stage, are a lot more important for everybody to know, hey, I'm the last person in command. I'm the decision maker. If that doesn't get delivered, this is on me. This is my department. Because otherwise, early stage founders, I'm the president and CEO, and he's the chief of whatever. Like, you're 2 people. Like, it's who are you chief of? Like of yourself, or like so in that sense, I think it makes sense. Obviously, in probably an organization of the size you are at, Vicky, it's a different story.
It's always my fault if something goes wrong. The only one who actually might get away with his team, because there are 2 CEOs, so I don't know whose fault it is, right? But in my company, whatever happened is my fault. I'm never going to throw anybody of my people into the sharks. We fail on sales is my fault. Then I have to coach my people better, right? But when I was in large corporation managed 500 people, I was always the same. So I don't throw the shit down. It's my fault. Then I will go inside my house and clean the things. But my people is allowed to make mistakes. The key thing to signal that they can make mistakes is that no matter what happens, it's my fault. And then we will coach it. Because if you start pointing it out, then they will not make mistakes because they're afraid to be fired or to be pointed out, right? So whatever happens is the CEO's fault. That's the maximum of management.
I wanted to refer to the chapter actually because I think you wrote it very clearly. You have responsibility and then you have the accountability. So if there is somebody who is responsible for a task, but then this is the guy who has to do the job, but the person who is accountable is actually the guilty if something is not going well. And as a manager, I always have this credo that whenever something goes right, the credit goes to the person who did the job. And whenever something goes wrong in the area that I'm in, it's my fault because I'm the accountable one. And this person was the responsible one, and I didn't take care to give them all the resources to do their job. So I thought in the chapter about roles responsibilities, you wrote it very well.
There is I think it's Nelson Mandela, right? Leaders have to be in the front in time for defeat on crisis. In time of victory, everybody else deserves the credit, right? So, and that's the thing, you know, when things are wrong or when things are rough, that's why the generals in the war went to the front to signal to people, hey, when people are celebrating victory, they don't need you. They're happy, right? So to me, it's the same idea about giving credit, right? So leadership is on times of difficulty, in times of defeat, in times of victory and happiness, you know. So that's why I think COVID has been a true test to many people who call themselves CEOs. This has been the time to prove leadership, especially not because of sales, but in front of your people, and how difficult it is to lead in these times that everybody's bored, everybody's worried, everybody's stressed, no matter even they have a job. So this is time for leadership, right?
But this is why they say victory has many fathers and the defeat is an orphan, no?
Yes, indeed.
Amazing, guys. Love this where this conversation goes. Unfortunately, we are kind of the time is getting late. So with that being said, and thanks for agreeing to disagree, and then we can actually find some subtleties and everybody listening, there is nothing that's absolute truth. Take your own lessons. That's one thing to get out of this discussion. But just to wrap up this whole discussion, thank you guys for joining in, sharing stories, examples, and so on. Let's just make a quick round, starting with the lady, Vicky, then Tim, Cristobal, in this order. Just quickly share, where could people, check you online, the organization that you are representing, and of course, we had a little discussion before. Why should people get a copy of the Perform book? You both have, not the non-co-authors. You both have read the book. Tim is actually in the book. So yes, Vicky, go ahead.
Yes, I read the book. So you can find me on LinkedIn, and you can Google me with this name that you see. And you can also read Victory Corners, which is a creative outlet of mine where I share, again, tips about productivity, about focus. And I wanted to wrap it up with one doodle that I did while you were talking. And this doodle is this. So we have a saying in Bulgaria that the fish starts to stink from the head. So what I'm saying is everything depends on you as a leader. So what you do is what translates in the roles and responsibilities for everybody else. And if you do well, if you don't stink from the head, then probably the venture will succeed. And thank you for Cristobal and Tim for being such good sports, and you, Stoyan, for being such a good host.
And why should people get a copy of the Perform book? Back to you, Vicky.
Because it's good.
I just really wanted to repeat what you said before we started on the recording. The minimalistic piece.
Okay. No, yes. I forgot about my minimalism, but I wanted to say this thing. Yes. Thank you for reminding me. So I'm a super fan of minimalism. So this is a trend on which you take away everything that is not important, that doesn't bring value, and you leave everything that matters and brings value. And while I was reading the book, I found out very, very big cover cover of the same topics from minimalism and from corporate management. So this is the reason that I truly believe that this book is great, because at least it matches my minimalism soul. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Vicky. Thank you so much. Tim, your turn.
Thank you, Stoyan. Thanks for having me on the show. It's been great. You people could reach me at LinkedIn, Tim Hall. I think Tim Hall Atlanta. I come up fastest. And I would recommend the book. I read a lot of business books and have over a very long period of time. And many of them you may find are a thesis and then some really good examples, and then the same thing repeating over and over and over again to fill out 300 pages. This book that you guys wrote is very actionable. It's a fast read, and it's chock full with really good examples and illustrations of kind of a practical way to approach it. So the theory is in there. It's really well grounded in the science, but more importantly, if you're an entrepreneur and you have like 30 minutes between when you turn off your computer, when you hit the sack, this is a really good, quick primer for you to get as much learning as you can out of a lot of people's years and years of experience.
But a question, do you plan audiobook?
Yeah, Cristobal is going to be the narrator.
Yeah, anybody is looking forward to me doing an audiobook with subtitles, AI and ML all in one, and a bit of blockchain, so they understand 30% of it. And if I will actually do it when I'm talking on the phone with headphones, that makes it much easier. Yeah, we are preparing something digital, actually, a multimedia thing. Actually, we are working on it. It should be first pilots through a startup. We'll do an MVP in the coming months, and I hope by the summer we have a full rollout, Perform Academy kind of direction. And I think adding more and more, but it's not only us, but adding examples like Tim and many other founders. So I think that's the direction. Just amplifying what Tim said and Victoria is about practice. So we have theory, we have frameworks, we have methodologies, but it's about showing that anybody around the corner in the new Europe, in Bulgaria, in Ukraine, in Poland is an inspiring character, and you don't need to go to the ballet to find those. And that's what we have always been preaching, Startup Wise, guys. The role models of the new Europe are here. There are not any other places, and they're being grown, and we believe in them. And saying that, we have applications open for SaaS, starting in Tallinn in our batch 24, only batch 24. So Tim was in batch 10, so imagine batch 24. So looking for talent that has the ambition, the dreams, and the passion to solve a worthy problem. So please apply to talk to us. And if you're in cybersecurity, we'll announce something soon, but we're also looking at cybersecurity companies. And of course, a book is available online, and the print copies will be available very soon. So you can already pre-order your print copy. People still like print copies. I think people like print copies even more these days because they cannot feel tactile economy after the whole day in the screen. So I understand that most of you are holding back. We will send you a print copy soon. But again, to me, the pleasure is also to meet people like Victoria and Tim, and to work with Stoyan at creating meaningful and real stories. And that's what that inspired us, and we continue inspiring us on creating this book and next books.
Guys, I just realized I have one more props that I haven't used yet, and I want to use it as an end of our conversation.
Let's do that.
The reason of why you startup community, you really can benefit from this book, and it's really useful, is this, because it's ooh la la. So really buy the book, and you will see it's very practical. Thank you, guys.
Stoyan, I think you need to take from Victoria some advice on fashion and process, etc.
She's always well prepared, man. I mean,
clearly,
need to learn. On the note of the audiobook, probably it's going to be also an audiobook. We'll figure out who's going to narrate it. Maybe we'll hire somebody at the end, or maybe we'll just keep it very authentic. Eastern European / South European for the people who enjoy extreme adventures. So let's see about that. But that being said, guys, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you, everybody who joined us today, contributed with questions and also comments, listening to the podcast afterwards. Make sure to tune in next week as well on Tuesday, where we're going to have the next panel with a couple of other super exciting guests like the ones we have here. So, Any final words, anybody, or we after
Fun.
the doodle, after the doodle of Victoria? That's
Yeah, oh la la. You know, we can just say oh la la, au revoir, mon ami. You know. Thank you, guys.
awesome.
See you
Cheers,
soon.
everybody.
Ciao, guys.